this year, especially, I feel like I've complained about this topic for so many times, like on interviews and on Clubhouse and stuff. And it's definitely a problem. And it's probably one of the worst problems.
Welcome to Talkback On, episode 7. It's where we go behind the scenes of the industry from the other side of the glass. We have our host, Jay Chong, a legend in the game as a producer and composer. KAIROS, who is the CEO of Decade Plus Music Publishing, award-winning producer and songwriter. I myself, KO, who's an audio engineer. But, send me some demos, hook your boys up. This week, I'm going to go over some stereo bus treatment, what I like to do in terms of pre-processing for mastering, but also sometimes just giving some love to your mix. So I hope you guys enjoy this one.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's KO here. Today on Circuit Board, I'm going to show you some quick tips on how to prepare your mixes for mastering. So let's get right into it. All right, so this session is the Talkback On intro. Let's just check it out. Cool. So the first thing that I do when I make my own tracks is I always color code them. All my drums are yellow, my basses are brown, and my instruments are purple. The effects are sky blue. You can also see here that I have them all routed to a stereo aux, and my stereo auxes are always on the top right before the master bus. So this is important for me to set up because when you're mixing, you tend to focus a lot on the individual tracks. But with this, it gives me overall control, especially when I'm trying to figure out the final gain staging as well as processing before going into mastering. That being said, all of my drum tracks are going to be going to this drum bus, and it's got this SSL bus style compressor with some EQ. To take out some of the conflicting areas with the other subgroups. On my bass, I have my EQ as well as a distressor from UAD, which sounds amazing, by the way. My music bus, I got a whole loads of stuff from an EQ to this amazing variable mute compressor, along with this multi-band compression going on. This track doesn't really have vocals. However, like Slate VTM, which is a virtual tape machine, as well as additional EQ and a multi-band compressor is my go-to settings. If we scroll down here, you'll notice that the sky blue tracks, there's risers as well as sweeps in my music bus. So the reason why I like to keep my risers, sweeps, as well as downlifters in my music bus is just solely due to the wavelength. And that really affects on how the compressor sounds as well too. So make sure you keep that in mind when it comes to decision-making time. For your tracks and routing them to the right bus. So the last thing I like to focus on is gain staging. As you can see here, my bass is brought down considerably low, most likely due to it being a layer. My music bus is brought down pretty low as well too. What's great is that I get to actually have control over each department than figuring out which instrument is the one that I need to raise for the mix. When you work with other artists as well as producers, sometimes they'll just tell you, hey, raise the drums up, raise the bass up, raise the vocals up. And that's all just due to energy. Sometimes it might require it to be that individual track you need to raise, but sometimes they just want that drums to be bopping or the vocals to be a little hotter and on top of the mix more. So it really depends on, and it's always case by case scenario. But hope you guys enjoy this one, and until next time, see you guys later.
Welcome back, guys. We have a very special guest today, a Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer who has done countless of well-known hits from Usher, Timbaland, to BTS, Twice, and Everglow. A very talented bass player and a master of low end. Please welcome Bob Horn, everybody.
Woo! Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Just to get things started, KAIROS, I know you and Bob have known each other for quite some time. How'd you guys end up meeting each other?
Oh, man. I don't know if Bob, you know this, but it's been almost 10 years now, that I've
2011 or
it might have
12?
been even further back because the way,
Oh, I love in person
yeah,
2011.
right.
Yeah.
Because what I was doing back then, I was engineering in Chicago, and I would pretty often like just look through album credits, and I came across I think it was Raymond vs. Raymond, the Usher album, and Bob Horn's name was on that, and I emailed you, I think, and then Bob emailed me back. It was like, I want to say it was like a 2-3 page email, and I'll never forget this because he didn't have to do that, but he talked about just everything from the industry and the questions that I had, and the expectations when I do enter this. And so yeah, Bob has been a big part of me just getting introduced to the LA circuit, being out here. And something that I always tell people is that Bob's just that kind of person that he helped me when there was no real reason to help me, and without anything expecting anything back, and that always meant a lot to me. So yeah, I really appreciate you, and I'm really happy that you're on the show, because that's that really means a lot.
I actually have that email saved like
Oh,
years
wow.
ago when I went through and I just cleared out my email, like thousands of old years. I actually have that because I've had the same email address.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's actually, I think it's at the bottom of all the undeleted emails. It's in there.
Wow. One of the things that Bob said in that email is he invited me out to just hang with him, and so I think maybe it was like a few months later, I ended up coming out. At that time, I think you were transitioning from Hive Studios to, Echo Bar.
I think you came when we had only put up the studs, like the walls weren't even up yet. And you would visit.
Yeah, you and Eric had like air mattresses. It was, and by the way, if you guys haven't, you guys have to check out Echo Bar Studios, because it's one of the best studios. What you guys built by hand, I can't believe you guys did that, because I don't know, that's pretty incredible.
A lot of these days, people have been kind of, I guess a lot of these people tend to wear hats when it comes to like home recording, home, making their own tracks at home and stuff like that. I want to really focus on the role as, a professional mix engineer.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we wish everything could be mixed by pros, and I know producers probably want that, but I know there's also the side where people are nervous about having someone else touch their creation. It's their baby, and they don't want to mess up. And especially if they've worked with an inexperienced engineer or the wrong engineer for their project, and that guy didn't give them what the song needed or what they envisioned, then they might have kind of left a negative mark about working with pros. And I don't know, when you're first starting out, or you don't have budgets, or maybe you're learning, you got to do what you got to do. And sometimes you have to take the reins yourself and learn to mix some, so you can make stuff sound decent. Maybe you don't have the money to hire a pro, but when you do hire a pro as a producer, a lot of the good pro mixers, they just know things that you might not know as a producer. And it's because, if you think about it, if you spend every day making beats or compositions, writing lyrics, producing vocalists, and that's all you do, all we do is every day EQ stuff, compress stuff, level stuff, try to get a vibe for a mix. So it's basically a focused expertise. And my hobby is producing, like, rarely on the side, and I don't get that many opportunities of it. And I'm even, I'm not that great of a songwriter, but I've had little tiny things here and there, but my focus is engineering. So on the flip side, producers, they got to engineer out of necessity. But when you can have a pro do it, and it's the right pro, I mean, the sky's the limit. Like, you guys could really, hit a home run. It's like, especially if you get a team going and you got your guy you always rely on, and he knows your sound. And the more we work with somebody as mixers, the more we just kind of know their sound back of the hand. Like, I hope, and I'm sure when you work with KAIROS, it's like you guys have worked together so many years now. You just know, like, what not to do. It's like, oh, he's not going to like this reverb on his production, or, he's not going to like the vocals this low. He wants them louder, or whatever it is, because you guys know each other so well. And that's the important thing, working with someone or someone that can just get you, and so pro engineers can go a long way, do a lot of good, making a producer look good, making the song look good, making the artist look good. And I mean, again, the flip side is if you get someone that just doesn't get your vision, or they're hard to work with. So yeah, it's like anything. You just got to find the right people to work with, but there's a lot of benefits.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I think having that kind of, like second pair of ears that can really just kind of enhance your project sonically, but more importantly, just as you said, developing their sound. That's always a journey, right? That's always something where artists, producers are always trying to figure out creating that next sound, and having somebody on your team that's helping you develop that. That's very important. As you mentioned, Kairos and I, that's something that we always focus on. And what I really like about it too is that he challenges me to say, let's come up with something new. Let's try some new reverb. Let's try something cool with effects, or let's try something new with vocals. And I think that's important because, we're always, that's how we're being creative, right? It's not always just a technical thing that we do. I think a lot of what we do is very artistic, and in fact, sometimes revolutionizing how things should sound sonically too. So,
yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah, me personally, I definitely miss the days when I worked, hand in hand with engineers from the recording stage, and I think, like for me, like the best experiences, or memories of that is like when it comes to acoustic instruments, right? Just getting the right levels, and and ever since, I've done a lot of stuff on my own. I pretty much work on my own. I don't have assistants either, so I'm often having to record stuff myself. And man, sometimes I'm thinking like, man, I would kill for a great engineer to sit here with me and inspire me in different ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when I started, there was the big studios with a staff assistant and a freelance engineer, and it's like people didn't even put on a CD or play a song without the engineer in the room. It's like they didn't know how to work anything, and now everyone, they get a laptop and they learn the programs, and it's everyone gets better and better, and there's a lot of self-sufficiency, and that's great because the music world has opened up so large, especially to indies, and people that would never have an opportunity can get these big shots at records and placements and stuff like that, and they can reach out to people that are already deep in the industry and make their way, and just off of working at home and not in a real studio. It's like back before my time, maybe 10 years before my time, you had to have $3,000 to pay all the musicians, the studio, the engineer, and lunch for everybody just to do one day of studio time. So, and home recording was even expensive because of all the equipment, unless you're using a cheap like 4-track cassette player. But if you had something real, it was a big investment. So now you can get GarageBand for free on your Mac laptop and get started, and then if you get into it and have some headway, you can invest later in more equipment. So it's really opened up the indie world to everybody and giving people opportunities. So it's great musically. It suffers a little technically sometimes, because people that are early in their careers can reach so high in the industry. We sometimes, as mixers, we get stuff that they recorded at home, and it might be a little rough, and it takes a little more finagling to make it sound like $1 million, So, but yeah, it's great what it's done for music, just technology in general,
Have you heard any DIY mixes that made you turn your head?
Yeah, I mean, man, there's always someone talented and better. Like there's some kid in Omaha, Nebraska right now that's mixing circles around me. I'm sure, that he doesn't even know it. He just has it naturally, and it's there's definitely been some stuff even that I've received where it's like, am I going to be able to make this better? When I hear their rough mix, I'm like, God, this sounds good already. And then luckily 9 times out of 10, when I work on it, it's like, oh, there is more room to improve on it. Even I surprised myself with it, but there's some talented people out there, man, for sure.
It's kind of scary to think about that.
I guess, one of the questions that I'm curious of is due to the pandemic, I'm sure there, as we talked about, there's a lot of people recording from home, and sending files from home. Now, as a professional mix engineer, what is the, I guess, things that you see right away that could be problematic, or stuff that, I guess anybody who's doing stuff at home could be more aware about?
Well, I mean, it's really all comes down to vocals, because unless they're recording acoustic guitar or electric guitar or grand piano in their living room or something, if they have one, those problems don't come up that often. When I do get in, like for example, an acoustic guitar recorded at home, most of the time it's not stiller, because not only does it take a good sounding room and a great microphone, it takes knowing great mic placement. And the problem with microphones is if you move the acoustic guitar 2 inches, the sound is totally different from the mic, So stuff like that. But with vocals, I think most of what I've seen, everyone can get a pretty decent level, hopefully not distort the signal, get it recorded pretty cleanly. The problems are in the room. A lot of times they're in an untreated room and it has a little bit of reverb, like maybe their living room or their bedroom, and you hear an echo that they don't necessarily hear themselves, or maybe they don't think it's problematic. But then, I like to process my vocals. I like to tweak on them until they sound like they were recorded on a $10,000 microphone. And when I do that, sometimes it just exposes those problems more. The other thing I see with vocals is a lot of times they're dull when they start out. When they're recording just the flat signal, it's a dull sound, and they might miss audibly hearing some distortion or some artifacts, like some high-pitched noise, some weird sibilance. I had a singer recently that sent me a vocal, and once I got it bright enough to sound commercially viable, it just heard like crazy. It had this weird high-frequency thing to it, and her mic was broken, but it still passed signal clean enough so where when her headphones with the mic kind of flat and dull, it sounded right. And then when we got in here and started tweaking on it, it's like, wow, that's not great. So, it's like, fortunately, I have a booth. Jump in there, let's record this vocal over. And we had to add a day onto the project, but so those are the things I see mostly, and that's a thing that a professional engineer is going to catch. And I realize not everybody can go rent a studio and pay hourly or daily and pay those big bucks, but man, when you do and you have someone that not going to mess it up, it's like they catch all those little things. So it's like, oh, there's something weird in the mic. Let me get a different mic from the cabinet. It's like, let me fix that. There's a buzz in the cable. That's a bad cable. Let me switch it out. All those problems that sometimes get by the artist, because not only maybe they don't hear it because the way they're monitoring or their headphones isn't the best, but also they're focused on the art. They're focused on the song, the vibe, what lyrics they wrote. They have a lot to think about. And that was the purpose back in the day of the engineer that was sitting right there with you while you do it. And it's like his job is to catch all that stuff. And when he doesn't, you can fire him, yell at him and all that stuff. But, it's great for an artist, I believe, when all they have to think about is singing and rapping. They don't have to hit record. They don't have to edit, They can just say, oh, let me do it again. And then the engineer will take care of it, and, so that stuff is amazing when you have the opportunity to use it,
For sure. Yeah. I think for me, it's like, sometimes, their recording might be great, but they touched it too much, like editing or something. And you'll have like those, like those comps where they don't really splice it right. So you'll have those blips, or like maybe they tuned it way too hard, or printed something into their vocals. So some of those things I just ask, like, hey, just give me the session. Let me just
chopped off reps and chopped off regions where they think it was good, you got a solid consolidated file, and the edits, you hear them all, their little pops, like, you gotta go in with these crazy tools and try to remove these little clicks that aren't even part of the vocal,
Yeah.
But luckily we have all those tools, and some people use them better than others. But yeah, it's I get it. It's like home recording. It's like you got to do what you got to do. But if you can setup in a closet or a treated room, or if you don't have a treated room, open your closet with a bunch of heavy coats and put a mattress on the side of the door. Like, do whatever you got to do. Hang a blanket. It's like remove the element of your untreated room in the microphone so that when you start belting that bridge and that chorus, it doesn't involve this ugly sounding bedroom. It's like, do whatever you got to do. They even sell products now that you can clamp on the mic stand that kind of isolate the mic, and so it's like any of those kind of hacks that you can do if you can't afford to go to a studio with an engineer and you can't afford to acoustically treat your room. It's like there's a lot of little hacks you can do to make things better.
I've one time received a file where all the vocals, like were missing breaths, like all the breathings, like they edited those out. So like it sounded like they're suffocating or something, and it was just like there's no way to fix that.
You literally have to go to another song and start stealing breaths and place them in one at a time.
Placing,
if I do a good amount of compression on a vocal, I'll end up turning breaths down maybe 5 to 7 dB. But if you get rid of them, things can sound weird. Like if I get rid of them, it might be on backgrounds that are singing the same rhythm and same stuff as the lead is singing, because then you have 10 people essentially breathing at the same moment. So you only need one to lead, So, chopping them all out permanently, it's definitely not the way to go.
The crazy thing was it was sent by a professional engineer. So it's like
I did that once early in my career, and I didn't do it after that because they weren't happy.
So when you do receive vocals with like unwanted ambience in the back, like what do you do to like alleviate that?
There's not a lot you can do. There's certain things like Isotope RX and certain plugins that can help, and sometimes you get lucky. I had one last week, and it wasn't a lot. It was just a little bit of ambience, and it blended into the track, and then also manipulating the mid-range helped hide it. And luckily, that mid-range manipulation sounded complementary to her vocal. But that's why engineers complain about that stuff, because you can hide it a little bit, but you can't get rid of it. Distortion, room sound. It's like digital click. Well, digital clicks you can sometimes get rid of, but a lot of that stuff you can't get rid of. That's why, having an engineer or learning good engineer skills yourself, that's important, because that stuff's permanent. And if it was a great performance and you're happy with it, you don't want to have to record it again, but you want to sound like Drake and Ariana Grande. It's like you're stuck now. You have this substandard vocal recording. That's a great song maybe, but it's important to not have those things if at all possible.
Yeah, I think one of the more challenging things from a engineering standpoint is a lot of times people send things expecting the engineers to just fix everything, right? Especially having it being like kind of the last part of the chain where, it's like your hands are on what's supposed to go out. And if things don't go well in that process or at that stage, then it kind of sometimes falls onto the engineer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of why you got to have a handful of ways to fix every situation. I mean, and again, we mentioned some of them aren't fixable at all, but like having just one technique to fix something, it's like once you use that technique and it doesn't work, you're out of luck. So, collecting those engineering ways of doing things and having multiple ways to address a problem. And that's what the definition of engineering is problem solving. Yeah. And we don't like it. We'd rather just mix and make things sound good and everything be perfect. And you get the occasional artist where everything's like that, and it's awesome. But other times we got to solve problems.
That's definitely a good point too. Because if you think about it, when we listen to a track, we're looking at ways to enhance it, but it's more like, let's fix some of this stuff over here instead. So
let's say you receive a song, and the kick isn't necessarily something that you would put out as part of your taste, right? It's not something that you would stamp as like your signature sound. What do you do with a kick that comes in and it's actually You know, and I'm sure you can EQ it, you can, you know, tone shape it, but at the end of the day, it's still not really the right kick. How would you approach that?
I kind of have a few thoughts right away. It's like, who is the person giving me the song, and how attached are they to that kick? And then if it's a producer that I've done stuff with before, and I know that they're good, and it's just like, oh, well, they meant to do this, and maybe they didn't hear the problem I hear, but texturally, I'll say they wanted this kick. So how can I take the steps to make both of us happy? And what I mean by that is, like, let's say the kick has just a horrible, weird sub flubby low end thing, but the texture's nice. The mid range, the hit factor is really nice. I like to layer kicks. You know, if it's not a situation where I'll totally replace the sound, and I need to keep what they did, you know, vibe wise, I'll keep the sound, but maybe I'll roll off the low end and put in a sub sample. You know, I collect drum samples. I have for 20 years, so I have them all different eras through the 2000s, and you know, I subscribe to beat packs and splice and all that. So I can usually sometimes even find a really similar kick or the same kick. Even I've even had my own samples sent back to me the way I labeled them, and I knew they were mine. And I knew that person got them from someone that I gave them to and said, "Don't give these away," and they had it. But yeah, I mean, layering is great. Like, you know, we have a lot of samples here where, you know, we'll just replace the little pillow 40 hertz, 60 hertz thing, but then the mids and all that and all the cool stuff will still be there. And the producer doesn't know. They just think, wow, he's a master of EQ. I couldn't get it like that in my studio. And they'll be thinking, oh, he didn't replace it. You know, and other times it's just appropriate to completely replace it. So if it's like let's say it's a songwriter that's, you know, she's all into her song. So it's like vocals and acoustic, that's her thing, but she hired someone to produce, or she made the beat herself and it's not amazing. And I might have a conversation just out of respect. It's like, hey, do you mind if I try another kick? Or if I'm just going to go for it and replace it, I'll have the original like on a playlist where I can switch in like 2 seconds. Cause I've had that happen where it's like, I replaced a kick and the producer's like, that kick was important. That was my sound. Why'd you change it? And I got to be able to, and I got to be able to do like, oh no, it's there right there. It's right back. Don't worry. Don't flip out, you know? But I try to be respectful because some people, that's their thing, the drum sound. Some guys are even known for it. And you don't want to just go changing stuff. Sometimes it's like I could have some claps and it's like, that would be really nice with a nice shimmery, crispy high end, but it's really dull. So I'll just blend in a little sample, just a little bit. And they'll be like, oh, he EQ'd it perfectly. And it's like, no, it's better than EQ. It's just a little bit of sizzle from another clap sound and you don't even know. You know, so it's like, that's kind of my approach with kicks and snares and all that stuff. You know, I've just spent so much time collecting libraries and plugins that help me do all that. You know, there's a lot of tricks and transient designers and, you know, all that stuff, you know.
Do you still have your transient designer?
My physical one I sold about 3 months ago. I finally sold it. And that was specifically because Sonic's Transmod and Isotope Neutron Transient Shaper, those two. And then some of the older ones I've used, like Transify from JST and, you know, the Plugin Alliance SPL, the classic one. Like those, I can get it done with all of those. Like for a while, the analog SPL Transient Designer was the only thing that was 100% great every time, you know. But now the plugins have finally reached that level. You know?
I mean, I had the TD4. I had that for a little bit, and then I sold it, and I couldn't find anything like in the plugin world to replace that. So that I have to check out because that's pretty cool. Yeah,
the Neutron Transient Shaper, not only is it multi-band, but it's also very flexible.
Oh wow.
So I would has a lot of different character selections. So soft, smooth, sharp for how it hits when you do it drastically. So I use that plugin on so many things, even other than drums, pianos, you know, strings, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Do you have any tips about overproducing from a mixing engineer perspective? Because we get this as producers, we get this question a lot: is how do I know when I overproduce? But I think it's really good to know especially from an engineer perspective.
I feel like even this year, especially, I feel like I've complained about this topic for so many times, like on interviews and on Clubhouse and stuff. And it's definitely a problem. And it's probably one of the worst problems. I mean, engineering quality, it almost doesn't matter compared to overproduction. And I get a good share, my good fair share of overproduced records. It's actually a breath of fresh air when I get something that's perfectly produced or even under. And here's the big phrase to say right now. I've had underproduced records probably less than 10 times in my entire career where it felt like, wow, this really needs another thing. That never happens, you know. But the overproduction is daily. It's like it's most of the time. And it just takes not to insult anyone, but it takes maturity to stop and realize that yes, that part you have in your head is possible, but there's no room for it, and then the song doesn't need it. And there's just conflict, and it's like people want their stuff loud. Well, half the reason you can get loud is by having empty tracks. And I suggest to people, turn on your favorite songs, maybe not mega super dense K-pop songs, but you know, other stuff like, you know, American Top 40, you know, like stuff like that. Make a list, like write down like what is in that track. Try to name the tracks. It's like, okay, I hear hi-hat, I hear shaker. Okay, there's another hi-hat. There's one kick. There's 108. There's this. There's that. You know, it's like, okay, go back to 2010s where I actually got the multi-track for Just Dance by Lady Gaga. It was one of the smallest Pro Tool sessions I've ever seen. And it's like they do more with less amount of tracks. And that's the key to great production and getting your song loud. Loudness is not a wall of sound, meaning tons of tracks. It's a wall of sound, meaning big sounds. And if you think about it, there's so many ways to think about this. Think about in our DAWs, we have a master fader with 2 channels, left and right. And you have the meter, the green meter. And you got to fit everything down that bottleneck of 2 channels. You got 200 tracks, you got to fit into 2. And the more you have in the tracks, the more you got to turn them down so you don't mess up that stereo output. So the less you have, the louder and bigger and fatter everything can be. So well-produced tracks have what they need to make the song have groove, have, you know, the musicality, have the cool stuff. And the most important thing is the vocal and 90% of music. And if you put a bunch of stuff that you're never going to be able to hear, it's just noise. The human ear can only focus on 3 things at a time before it has to switch to something else. Now, it doesn't mean only have 3 things in your songs. Of course not. But don't have 250. It's like that 4th shaker you're about to add. Does it really need it? And I'm not talking about sounds where it's like one synth and then you use the same MIDI file to trigger another synth as a layer. That's fine because it's really one sound. It's just a texture layer. But when you're adding that 3rd arpeggiated synth sound on a track that you're going to end up doing all these background vocals and then counter melody background vocals and then the lead, and then you also do an ad lib and you got 7 snares, and then, you know, I get tracks with 9 basses in them. And it's like, what the heck? It's like, the good part is sometimes they only play for one quick little bridge section, then it's back to another, but you can do it with less, and it's to your advantage to try because your song will come out better and it'll sound better. The mix engineer will do a better job. And then my last point about it is the time spent. It takes me some of these BTS, and I'm not complaining about the BTS or Everglow records because they know how to use a lot of tracks well, and that's a talent too. But it takes me 2 days to mix them, and I don't even get really that creative until the second day. And I don't mean the creative as in inventing crazy delays and stuff. I just mean paying attention to the musicality and getting into the song and trying to convey the emotions that the writers and producers want. I have to spend hours and hours just discovering. And you got to remember your mixer, if he wasn't there from the first note recorded through the whole production, he doesn't know the song or what's in it. So when you come back to me and say, oh, that guitar 14 is supposed to actually be more felt than heard, I'm like, okay, well, wait a second. I got to find guitar 14. There it is. Oh, okay. Now I remember that from yesterday when I was working on this. You know, it's every track we turn on and unmute, we have to discover and find out, what does this do in the song? Where does it play? Where does it not play? We got to find a place for it. We got to check your rough mix, see where you had it, how you had it panned, what effects you had on it, or what you like to hear it at. And when it's just a big mess, it's like it takes us so long to finagle clarity and make it sound good. I mean, you don't want us to just push up the faders and give you back what you gave us. You know, you want it to be special. So the more you give us, the more time we have to spend on it. And if we only have a certain amount of time, like 1 day or 8 hours, if you're paying by the hour and you know, and you're at a studio with an engineer and you only have 8 hours of money to spend to mix your song, but you give him 100 tracks, you're going to use all your time him just trying to make sure he doesn't screw up and he gets everything in and audibly heard before he can actually, you know, that I think that's why a lot of guys like hip hop tracks. It's like kick, snare, hat, vocal, bass, lead sound. Okay, now let's vibe on it. Let's make sure it sounds great. You know, it's like you have extra time to make sure it's amazing, not just get every track in and heard, you know?
Specific to K-pop, is there a different approach you take for K-pop, or is it the same as Western pop?
K-pop, yeah, it is a little different because usually in K-pop there's more members, and a lot of Western pop there's one person, maybe two. In K-pop, like, so yesterday I mixed an Everglow song, and there's 6 members in Everglow. There's 7 in BTS, and the thing is, anytime that they are alone on the record, meaning they have a lead vocal, it has to sound amazing. It has to sound. I have to put in the time on each 7 members or each 6 members vocal as I would on a Western pop song on just one vocal. So I have to make that lead vocal sound great. I have to make the mic sound like a $1 million, you know, I'm exaggerating, but you know, super nice microphone, and you have to give it all the love and care you do on a Western pop. You just have the one vocal. So, and then the other thing with K-pop is there's many vocals. You know, they'll have their doubles, their ad libs, their gang vocals, their background vocals, and they all have to sound great. I mean, that's the thing. You're making the artist shine, and it's a lot of rides and comparisons. This girl's EQ on her mic has to sound the same when this girl comes in, and maybe her voice, they use the same mic on everybody. But maybe on this girl's voice, it's kind of muffled just because that's how her voice is, and they didn't pick the perfect mic for her and the perfect mic for this one and the perfect mic for this one. So it's just a lot more mixing, and it's fun. But the cool thing about K-pop is that they have sections. Their sections are like different worlds. So they have a verse, and then when it gets to the chorus, it's a whole new world. Sometimes new drums, new basses, and that's different than overproducing, where it's 6 basses going the whole 3 minutes. This is 6 basses, but one's for the verse, one's for the bridge, one's for the pre-chorus, one's for the chorus, one's for the outro. You know, it's like, so you just have to spend time making all those sections sound good, and then the transition to them has to be smooth. Like that can be a challenge, making all the verse sounds seamlessly meld into the chorus, you know?
I mean, I've worked with some Chinese artists in the past where, like, you know, if I use too much de-esser, it would change the meaning of the word. Like, do you have somebody sitting there making sure, like, the word, you know, like the lyrics are like properly, I don't know, like projected?
No, I got practice with that actually with KAIROS. Yeah, so I've had a lot of practice out. I've mixed a lot of Chinese stuff the last probably 3 or 4 years. And even in Korean stuff, you got to be careful not to change the syllables too much and over DS. So I'm just really careful, and they'll let me know if they hear anything, but it's usually, it's usually subtle ride stuff, then rather than over DSing. I kind of learned my lesson back in the day.
Yeah, I think also sometimes the waveforms are a little different too, right? Because you'll see a little blip and you'll think it's like the tongue click or something like that in the English language. But if you actually listen to it, sometimes it could just be a very hard syllable in a different language. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes you really have to listen to what you're doing rather than just kind of looking at the waveform and just blindly just deleting things just because of your assumption.
Yeah, I mean, emotionally mixing vocals in I think almost any language is the same. So that's not a problem, even though I don't know what they're saying or singing about. But yeah, it's just the syllables. You have to be careful not to alter too much with over processing or even volume rides, you know. But conveying the emotion that's coming out of their mouth, their voice is it's the same. So you know, it's just about making it feel good. You can tell when they're, you know, really emoting, when they're angry or they're trying to be sad or, you know, whatever, happy. And so it comes out the same in that perspective.
Cool. I'm sorry, I got to geek out but a little bit, but you said you got a summing mixer, a Neve mixer. Is it,
Yes.
Woo woo.
I believe last time we talked, you were talking about getting like BAEs. Or are they those or?
No. So I got the, it's called the Orbit 5057
Oh, okay.
Rupert Neve summing mixer.
Nice.
And I auditioned a few of them and chose that one, and actually had different engineers listen to ABs of different summing mixers, and that's what kind of everybody gravitated towards. So yeah, I just got that. I don't even think it's been 3 weeks yet. It's probably been 2 weeks.
Have you noticed like a huge increase in headroom? I know with the Hilo, it's probably raised a whole new level, but
with the Hilo sonically, it's better than what I had going before. But with the summing mixer, I can push it harder. And the great thing about this model, it has two outputs, two sets of stereo outputs. It has a 0 output and it has a -6. So if I have them both on my patch bay and I can choose. So if I want to push into the summing mixer harder, like we used to do back on the SSL boards and stuff, I can hit it harder. And then the output is reduced 6 dB. So I can come back in on a track to record the final mix. Conservative, and I can just use plugins to gain it back up.
that's cool. Yeah, summing mixers are something I've always wanted to get myself, but I was looking more like SSL Sigma kind of thing because I love the whole like automation kind of being able to do things in the
that's really
box.
cool. That the way that they automate with those, it's a cool thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was gonna mention before too, like how do you think like platforms like Clubhouse, you know, and I like some of these other ones I can't remember right now, but how do you think that has really helped this community? Just even, you know, in ways that for more opportunities and even just in terms of feedback and things like that.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing actually. I mean, even for myself, it's like I've learned so many cheat codes off of Clubhouse, and I've only been on it since was it January, and now it's May, so it's July, January to July. But yeah, I mean it's funny because there's so many engineers and they're big league engineers.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to hear, you know, we'll have these rooms and somebody will moderate, and you know, people will come up to the stage and ask a question, and you know, as an engineer, I get to hear other engineers answer that question and wonder how I would answer it, but then I get to hear them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get confirmation. I was like, yeah, okay, I do the same thing that he does. It's like, I'm not stupid. You know, I'm not an idiot. I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. And then other times it's like, oh, wow, that sounds cool. I'm going to try that, you know? And I've learned about plugins. I have a whole running list of Clubhouse plugins, and, you know, I've probably bought half of them. And, you know, I'm meeting people. I've probably met 6 or 7 people in person off of Clubhouse. I've gotten probably 2 or 3 mix gigs off of Clubhouse without even trying, you know?
Yeah.
But I know it helps a lot of people. And especially people coming up. I'm part of this regular room called Industry Swap Meet, and it's Monday through Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's not only engineering, they'll have like an engineering night, but then they'll have just other nights where they do different topics and learn things about publishing, and you talk to A&R people. And then there's other rooms where you can play your music and people get feedback. And, you know, I've been a part of those rooms and given feedback on some songs. And I think it's great. It's like a great perspective rather than having to, email somebody cold or Instagram, DM them and say, hey, can I send you a song? And you listen to it. And it's like, oh, what? We don't have the time. And it's like, hey, man, I'm not a songwriter. You should reach out to someone else if you want songwriting advice.
Right.
And it's like Clubhouse. It's just this open forum. It's just this. Choose a room that has the right category. You want to learn about Bitcoin or NFTs. Click on it and go listen to some people. And I would say probably 80 to 90% of what I've heard has been good advice. I know there's some. It's kind of the Wild West. I mean, there's definitely bad advice given sometimes, but for the most part, it's great, man. You learn so much, no matter what level you're on.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, just speaking from more of like the publishing side, and I know a lot of times when you see territories or markets that grow, especially like with K-pop, there's going to be a lot of new information that's put out there, and many times there's bad information out there. And I think like we've all been on Clubhouse and we've heard people talk about it. And some people, they've done one or two songs and all of a sudden they're the experts, in everything that they're talking about. And so it's very interesting because, like you said, there are very good information out there, and there are people that do kind of speak out of other people's experience, or in the worst case, you hear experience or knowledge based on like what Google is saying, and I think that's why we have a platform like this, and it's so important for us to talk about it because the information that you've been sharing is just so important that, I think a lot of people don't get to really hear or understand. When you're trying to compete at a certain level, especially, when we're starting to see more, crossover acts and crossover projects, I think having the right mixer is important.
Yeah, what I would say is the final level of mixing talent is your taste, and that's not the final thing you learn. It's something you develop, and it's something that unfortunately I think some people they just have it, and but other people learn it, and but it's important. But you got to get the skill and the technical part, but it's not all about that. You can take a song and technically ruin it. It's like you could make it great sonically piece by piece, but together it doesn't work, or you just change the vibe of it so much it's different from what everybody wanted, and it could be technically perfect, but that's not what they were going for, or maybe they're going for perfect in another way. There's a great story I like to always repeat about Dave Pensato and the song Beautiful by Christina Aguilera. He did what everyone would consider the perfect mix, and Ron Fair, the A&R guy, was there. Christina was there. Everybody teared up. It's like they were so happy. They got in the car. They started driving home, and Dave was listening to the mix in the car, and he turned around, and he got back on the highway, went the other direction. He went back to the studio, and he didn't start over, but he changed it. He fixed it and made it technically worse. He actually doesn't even consider that one of his favorite mixes. He thinks it doesn't sound that great, but he feels like it's better for the song. Right. And he reached out to the A&R guy and Christina and told him, you know what, that mix wasn't it. This one is way better song-wise. Like this shows the song better. Yeah. And I think one of them agreed, one of them didn't agree, but they went with it, and it was a mega smash hit. It's like he knew that it really wasn't about him in the mix. He knew that he had to get out of the way to show the song, and his taste in how he EQs a kick drum, how he EQs a vocal, how he compresses something. It's the choices he makes taste wise, what he likes, what he thinks is good for the project. That's what is the final talent thing to strive for. You should strive for it all along, but you also have to discover what that is, and then you have to kind of not think about it. It just becomes part of what you do, and then you're known for like, oh, I like to go to that guy for this thing, and then you could have a song, and it's like, you know what, his thing doesn't fit this song. I got to go with a different guy. Like I'm going to find this other engineer, try this other guy. So taste is the next level after the technical skill and knowing how to route things and knowing what the plugins do.
Yeah, I remember Dave, he shared this analogy. He said, you can just grab all these different colors as a painter, You can create the most beautiful colors that no one's ever seen. But if you just start mixing colors together, at the end of the day, they're just colors. There's no real painting, and in order for us to understand taste, you have to know your destination or what that end result is in the way that you picture it, and people will buy your taste.
Yeah, I mean, and taste develops in two forms, and one of them is just naturally what you like to do and what you hear, how you want things to sound, and that, I guess, can either evolve over time. I think my taste now, I know it's not the same as it was 3 years ago, but the other way it develops is learning from the producers and artists you work for. And so I've learned a lot from everybody. It's like I work with so many different artists and producers. They'll come in and they'll tell me, it's like, no, I don't like that. Do this. And then I'll kind of adapt that, like, oh, yeah, I like that too. That is better. And I'll start to do that on my next songs. And I'll keep it back in my mind, like, okay, when I work for him, let me make sure I do that because he likes that. So why fight that? It's like, well, I want to do what he likes because I know that. And then, some of these things you just learn. It's like, oh, well, this guy, likes this kind of verb, and that helped me discover that kind of verb. And now I like to use that. And I've taken that and put that into another form in my own mixing on other stuff, So I think you learn just as much working from people as you do on your own.
I remember, Bob, you told me how many mixes you done in 1 year early in your professional career, just to get your chops up, to get better. I know a lot of times when people look at just, different, experts or people in the business doing it so well, they don't see the practice. They don't see, the behind the scenes, the struggle, the failures. And so, in this show, we talk a lot about that. And I want to ask you, what that took, or, what it takes to be a very high respected, well-known, mix engineer that's done some big records, in our industry. Was it like 300-400 mixes in a year or something like that?
I had a 400 year. I had one 400 year.
Wow.
I've had many years of like 250 to 300. Wow. And it basically equates to one a day.
Yeah.
So the way I used to work was I would work until I burnt out, and then I would take that day off. And I didn't even decide in advance. I would wake up and be like, I can't get out of bed. I'm taking this day off. Yeah. And I would go back to sleep and wake up at 8 p.m. and, my day was ruined. But that's how I used to work. I used to go until I was burnt out, and when I have my own studio, I can do that, back in the other old days where when I first started and they had to book studios, and it's like you had to show up and you had to do it, because they were paying for the time. But so during COVID, so March to October 1st, I did 125 songs. And every night was like going home at 5 a.m., 7 a.m., 30 hours, sleeping on the couch in the studio. And, I had a scary health event in October, and that kind of brought all that to a halt and made me rebalance my life. And now I work less, but I work smarter. And I still mix a lot. I still do a lot of songs. Yeah. But I gotta be more focused. I gotta not take so many breaks like I used to, and not clown around, not go play video games or anything like that. I just have to actually do my work and get done so I can go home at a decent hour. And sometimes I don't get to, but, and then I try to take a day off, because I got out of college in 98. So I started professionally in 98, 99, and in all the years up till now, working every single day, 365, 20, trying to work 24/7 until you collapse. Maybe it got me where I am, but it didn't, we always want more. We always want what that guy's doing. Like, I want to work on what Manny's working on, what Pensado's working on, so it's like, you're never going to get there anyways, because if you got the right mentality, you always want to push yourself and have more. So it's like, I think now that I'm, 20 years in, I need to take a day off for sanity, because when I come back Monday and I took that Sunday off, I'm better. It's like I'm fresher. My mixes are faster. I'm not burning myself out, and spending unquality time when I'm burnt out trying to mix and hear stuff, and my ears are tired and everything's tired. and I'm forcing it rather than I come in fresh and it's like I'm nailing it. It's like, and that's such a better way of working. And I wish I realized it years ago, but maybe if I didn't do that, I don't know, maybe things would be different. But yeah, I still mix a lot, but I'm just trying to balance things more, and it's working out. So.
No, I mean, working smart is something that we talk about here a lot, because there's this mindset where people are like, you have to like stay up all night and do, I mean, sure, if you're able to handle that. But I think at a point we start realizing, especially when family starts getting involved and stuff like that, like we have to learn how to really prioritize things and, allow us to really work at our best moments and then be able to kind of recharge that too. So it's definitely a good thing to be brought up.
Now, my question is, like, with all the thousands of engineers out there, right? And, maybe like a handful of engineers are the go-to guys for all the songs. And that's probably why you're working so much, right? And like, my question is, what got you to that, like the small group of guys, a circle of engineers
Okay, so I don't even know if I consider myself in that circle. I mean, there's more levels above what I do, for sure. Like there's guys that mix a hit record every week, those guys. But I'm blessed to be where I am and work on with who I do work for. But it's kind of an annoying answer as far as what it takes, and there's this phrase that I learned a while back, that's work creates work. So if you're working, you'll get more work. And that's such an annoying concept, but it's so true. It's just exposure, people seeing your face, people hearing good things about you. Like my entire career has been word of mouth and recommendation from people championing me and telling other people, oh, you're about to mix this song, you should have Bob do it. I used Bob and it was a great experience, blah, blah, blah. Listen to this. And they're like, oh yeah, what's his number? It's like, that's how I've gotten probably 99% of my gigs. It's probably worked out less than 3 or 4 times ever where I cold called somebody or met them and asked for a gig and I got it. Like that has never worked for me. I don't think I have the talent of what do you want to call it, self-pimpage or whatever. Like I have to have other people talk to me, and I'll be the guy that's silent. Like, yeah, what he said, like let him brag on me. It's like, so I don't look arrogant, and then let the work speak for itself. So it's like you got someone speaking good about you, and then you have the talent to back it up, hopefully, or the vision. And so that's another thing that I'm proud of is I try to work well with people and get on their same vision as best as I can. And occasionally you expose them to a new vision that they weren't expecting. And because of that, I've really had another thing that's probably less than 5 times in 20 years where it didn't work out and they didn't use my mix. And, it's like, we just had to part ways, it's like, we just weren't, I wasn't the guy that they should have hired. And on one hand, it's like, they should have vetted me and listened to my work, and, hopefully they didn't. And then I just was in the total wrong ballpark. But, at some point, you don't want people coming to you because you can technically make something sound good, that you hope that they're coming to you because they like what you do. Specifically, they like what you do. So that's the goal, because then you'll have all the right projects, it's the people that you share their vision, Yeah,
I mean, it's just, doing it for a couple of decades, that's a huge accomplishment. And I think in any industry, music industry, whether it's producers or engineers, there's always like, hundreds, thousands of people out there, and maybe like just a handful of people that are actually making all the songs in every market.
Yeah,
so like,
for sure.
Whether it's I think the US or Asia, like there aren't actually that many people that are actually in the, what do you call it, like the A-list, that's like constantly working.
Yeah. And some people they get into it and then they get right back out of it.
Exactly.
It's not what they thought.
Because we get a lot of questions from aspiring engineers or producers, and their thing is like, how do I get into the game, right? That's like the number one question we always get. Even with this podcast, I think it's just, we're trying to help, I guess, young grads from Berkeley or whatever, like people who are trying to pursue a career in music, and to get, I guess, like how to get into that inner circle, right? You know, and
So
that's
people gotta like what you do, and more importantly, they gotta like you.
Yeah.
And I learned. So what was that? 9 years into what I do, I learned how important personality is, and I wish I knew it way ahead of time. People don't want you to just be a bump in the log with a sad face, focused and working on, tuning a vocal. They want you to be a good hang. They want you to. I didn't have this problem, but they don't want you to smell bad. They want you to take regular showers. You got to be able to, crack jokes. If it's that kind of vibe, you got to be able to hang with the people you're working with. And I've been in rooms with people where it's just uncomfortable, and it's like, okay, I don't know about astrological signs, but you're something different than I am. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's some engineer out there that'll track your vocal and vibe with you so much better. And you'll probably have a better session because he's on your wavelength, because we're not on the same wavelength, and, humans are different, so it's like, you got to have a personality, and we call it the hang. It's like, it's got to be a good hang. If you have your own studio that they're coming to, even if it's in your apartment in a bedroom, it's like, you got to make that vibe as cool as you can and comfortable for people. It's like, I don't really record vocals anymore, but when I did, and a few times where I produce and I record a vocalist, I make that booth, comfortable. Even if it's plain, it's comfortable. It's like the air isn't too cold, too hot. It's like there might be a couple candles in there. We use the battery powered ones for safety, but it's like, you got to make it like a welcome vibe. It's like my studio around here, I have to spend, minimum 8 hours a day in here sometimes. And before, I would spend 16, 20 hours in here. So it's got to be a good vibe for me. That way my spirits can be good. And I'm not, in this depressing room that's, like, I don't like gray. Like, gray studios are just a downer to me. It's like, some people like the gray, but I like my walls are red, and I guess you can see it on the camera. They're red and black, that's my room. And then hardwood floor. And then my couch is comfortable as heck. It's like people fall asleep on it all the time. And I love that. It's like, I want them to be comfortable. And, we picked a studio that was, close to a few restaurants. It's not the most amazing restaurants, but they're there. It's like, you can order food and get it over here. And then I have a little mini fridge that I found a silent one on the net, and I have beverages in there for people. It's like, you gotta make people comfortable. And then when you do that, you gotta be comfortable yourself. And then you gotta make them feel like you're a comfortable person. It's like, they're looking at you out of the side of their eye, like, oh, he's kind of weird. It's like, I don't know if I want to come back. I don't know if I want him touching my song. Like, what weird stuff is he going to do to my song? So all that's important. And what's funny about the engineering world is the things that are important are not fun. It's not a new plugin that does something really cool and makes your mix amazing. It's not, that's like, I could probably take stock plugins and mix circles around a newbie, just because I know what to do with them. And they could have all the fanciest $400 plugins out there. And that's not a brag. That's just a fact. It's like, it's not the tools. Is once you have a decent tool to make the song and it's not screw it up, then it's all about everything else. It's about you and where people are working, and it's not fun. It's not a fun answer to find out that that's the important stuff, but you want people to like you. You want people to respect you. You want them to like coming to your studio if it's not a remote situation. It's like all that stuff. You want people to talk good about you. You don't want someone to be across town and say, oh, I was thinking about using this guy to mix my song. And they go, oh, that guy? He was really hard to get a good price from. And his studio smelled funky. I think he has a cat. And the litter box was in the control room. And, it's like he distorted the vocals. So we had to re-record it. It's like, you don't want all that stuff said about you because you're not there to defend it. And so you got to go to great lengths to make sure, you're doing the right thing,
That is, I think what you just said is so important because, we're in the service business, and I think what sometimes like people forget because we're so caught up in the creative space But everything you just said is, I think, what we need to consider. I remember, talking to somebody on Clubhouse, and they talked about, how do you get those rates the way you want it? And I said, well, if you're fixed on those rates, and let's just say you did get that, the price to where you wanted it. That client might not even come back to you, because comparing prices, they might find someone else that could do, to subpar, or maybe even the kind of work at a better level, and get better prices somewhere else. If you don't fix and focus on the relationship building, there are a lot of things that you're going to miss, and so I think what you just said is so important, for the listeners out there.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot more points in what you just said. I mean, the rates, for one, it's like I didn't have a minimum until like 2 years ago, kind of, and then I raised my minimum, and I don't know, I felt scared to, because I still get people that'll reach out, whether they found me on Instagram or whatever, and they'll ask me how much for a mix, and I'll give them the spiel, and I'm kind of flexible, and I kind of let them know. And, but it's definitely not super cheap. And sometimes it's crickets. Like, I don't hear anything back after I say something, and it's just a few that'll say like, oh, that's great. Give me a couple months to save the money. Or other people will be like, oh, you know what? That's out of my range. Maybe in the future. And that's really cool. They do that. Other people just disappear, but, it's like, you can't really worry about the rate too much. I mean, don't get beat up, but there's so many opportunities that I've gotten by being flexible that almost passed me by. And I've seen other friends of mine get passed by because they were too much of sticklers. Like, I've seen guys that could have had a regular artist, top-notch artist, use their studio every time they were in LA, but they didn't want to work at night, or they didn't want that type of music, or they didn't like that rate, or all the above. And they just totally missed that opportunity. And that tracking situation could have turned into a mixed situation.
Right.
Could have turned into $30,000 for a huge major label project. Who knows, tracking and mixing or whatever. But it's, you don't want to get walked on and beat up. And I'm thankful I have a manager now to kind of be the bad guy. So that way I can be the cool guy. But, bad girl, she's a female, but it's you can't get fixated on the wrong things.
Right. I kind of started off this show talking about how you helped me, and that willingness to help other people, and in situations where someone might not be able to offer something, but to be a mentor, to be a friend, I think is also important, just in terms of how you build relationships in this industry. So yeah, I
mean, that's the stuff, like the whole reason I'm on your guys' show is because we had a connection years earlier. Like, I haven't actually worked for you in a few years, but we still know each other, we still respect each other. All that stuff. It's all about relationships. I mean, it's funny, there's an old it's not a saying, but it's an old thing where people say, don't treat an intern like crap and beat up on them and make them do outlandish things at a studio or record label, because 3 years from now they could be your boss. They could be like, oh, you want to hire him for a mix? No way, let's hire this guy because that guy was a jerk to me. It's like, it's relationships, man. That's what everything is.
Yeah, I remember that's what happened with the first time you went on Pensado's place. Dave and I, we were hanging out at his place, and he said, hey, do you know any engineer that wants to be on the show? Because I'm looking for someone, world class, top notch, and he kind of gave the criteria for that episode. And without hesitation, I just said, Bob Horn, you gotta get him on the show. And I remember I immediately gave him your number and everything, and that was just those moments where it just came in my head right away because of the relationship that we had.
Absolutely. And just to kind of emphasize your point for the people watching, you can give the biggest example is with artists, and so like people will say something like, oh, I can't believe that song made it on radio, or it's the top thing on the iTunes store, or the most streamed song. I hate that song. And the way that happened was relationships and connections, and that goes all the way down through the industries. Songwriting, engineering, mixing, producing. I Oh man, I love telling this little quick story. In my last studio, it was 2009. I was sitting there editing something, and there was people behind me, executives and managers for the artist and the artists themselves. And I heard a producer that I personally knew, not really a friend, but somebody that I had met and talked to. I heard them get a gig and then lose that gig worth tens of thousands of dollars in 4 minutes. Like they got the gig, and I heard them talking behind me. It's like they lost the gig, and they weren't even involved. They were never contacted. It was just it was talked about, and it was like, nah, I don't want to work with him.
Wow.
Okay, he's out. That guy just lost huge placements and huge money and publishing for years because one of those three people didn't like him.
Yeah.
You know, the overall thing isn't to say that you got to be likable by everybody. I mean, you don't want to be, again, you don't want to be walked on or beat up or anything, abused, taken advantage of, but you got to be cool. You got to be a good hang,
Yeah.
I'll give you a different example, different than likability and personality, but it's just kind of a more, I don't know. Well, so Ken Lewis, another well-known K-pop mixer. Ken Lewis has worked a lot with BTS and Kanye, lots of famous people, but he's known as the problem solver. A lot of the industry, I don't know if you want to call it hip hop, urban, a lot of those guys, when they don't have engineers, like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, they don't know how to do complex things, or they've never recorded a choir or an orchestra, and they want to do that on their song. And he knows how to do that stuff. So labels will go to Ken to solve problems. So it's like, hey, Kanye wants to do this with this sample, and we don't know how. Like how do we do this? And we want to record strings on top of this, but we want it to sound amazing. And Ken will just take the reins and like, I got you. I will figure it out for you. I know how to do it already, or we'll find out how, and he'll make that happen. And it's like, he's known for that. So it's like, it's not necessarily all about personality, but it's just about being valuable too. It's like my first few years when I was a regular engineer for a producer named Nephew, I spent like 5 years with him, and I recorded, I mixed, I played guitar, I played bass, I knew about arrangement, and we got to the point where he would make a beat on his MPC. I would track it in, arrange it, mix it, then I'd put the intro, verse, chorus. I'd align these 8 bars into a whole 3-minute song, and then he would come check it, make sure he liked what I did. Like, oh no, you know what? Make that pre-chorus only 4 bars instead of 8. And then we'd mute some things, and then I would grab the guitar and be like, okay, try this. And then like, no. And then I'd come up with something like, yeah, do that, but change this. And it's like, I had value to him to the point where when I wasn't available, he whined and he hated it because he didn't want to work with another engineer. Not because there weren't thousands of guys out there that could do it. Of course there were. It's just that I knew him so well and I was valuable because I had those skills and he knew them and I knew him like the back of my hand. It's like I could listen to him make a beat and I could pull up a track and label a timpani before he even started playing the timpani, just knowing, oh, he's probably going to put a timpani on this. Bam, bam, bam. There it is. And sure enough, hey, can you get me a track out of the motif? I'm going to do a timpani. Like, yeah, here it is already, Yeah. So it's like, you have value too. It's like little things like that. People don't forget, they remember that stuff.
Before we end though, can you just talk a little bit about Everglow so we can do a plug for you on that too?
It was epic, man. I mean, that their songs always are. It seems like they're striving for epicness. I've done 4 Everglow mixes now, and what's fun is watching the reaction videos. Those are great.
Oh yeah, those are always fun.
Yeah, but the first song, I think it's at 59 million views on YouTube right now. So a lot of people have seen it. It's an amazing video. I love the video, but they're just so good at the energy. It's like when you hit that chorus and it's just the drops are fantastic. So the recent one first just it came out well, and yeah, I was really happy with it and really excited to be part of it. It's a lot of fun working with those groups. I want to work on more, and even Twice was awesome. That song was really cool. I enjoyed that. All the K-pop stuff has been good. I mean, the GOT7 stuff, all that stuff, and then
Yeah.
I watch a lot of Korean dramas, so now I see like, a lot, tons. Like every day, my girl and I watch those. She's probably
Serious?
watching them right now.
Wait, I took you out to Krabi the first time, right?
Oh, dude, I've been to Korean barbecue now. After you took Eric and I've been there so many times. Actually, since I became a pescatarian or vegetarian or whatever, I haven't been. But there's a few. There's one in K-Town that is a seafood barbecue. So I go there. I went there recently. With that, I don't know if you guys know Sammy Vegas. He's a Korean rapper.
Yeah, Sammy.
He took me there a couple months ago. But yeah, man, I definitely Cali is one of my favorites. Bulgogi, all that stuff. The K-pop stuff is awesome, man. It's always a joy to work on. It's definitely challenging and it takes longer, and you have to, really, really mix it with care. But it's fun, This rough mix for the song I mixed yesterday, it's just a roadmap. So it's like, how loud did he have that guitar? How loud was this bass? And how bassy was it? How warm was it? And it's like sometimes you're surprised. It's like, oh, I thought that should have been louder, but he had it way down here. So
yeah.
And then sometimes their rough mix really wasn't their rough mix. It was just the final print they had, but it wasn't a good roadmap, But with the K-pop stuff, especially BTS, they're so organized. It's amazing and it's awesome because when you have a daunting track like that has a lot of tracks, 250 tracks, so many singers, it's just great how they give it to you. They give you these folders with these categorized stems, so it's like drums and then percussion and then these vocals and gang vocals, and they're all separate folders, so you can organize them, and they label them all immaculately. And then when you get your mix notes back later and they say, okay, well, this syllable, they'll spell it out phonetically. So for us white guys that don't know Korean, they're like, okay, this word, this syllable, raise this syllable of this word at 1 minute and 42 seconds. And it's like, we know exactly what to do. And they'll be like, okay, do this with the reverb. And it's like, it's so easy. And it still can take time because there's so much on that song to deal with. But especially being that they're in Korea most of the time, they're not here. And, the songs are pretty big and track counts are high. It's great how they handle stuff. And that is unfortunately a difference between the Western world and Korea is on their stuff. They're immaculate with how they prep files and give them to engineers, how they deal with the engineers. Everything's super professional. And over here, sometimes we get that, and other times we'll just get a file where the vocals don't sync up with the beat and the beat isn't even labeled, or the beat isn't edited properly because they edited the 2-track when they recorded the vocals, but the track is the wrong arrangement, and we have to do it and figure it out, and we've never heard the song before. So it's a mishmash of professionalism. Sometimes the tracks are labeled audio 1, audio 2, audio 3. It's like they want to raise the the third hi-hat. It's like, well, which one is the third hi-hat? They all say audio.
Yeah.
It seems like in the K-pop stuff, their rough is their attempt at a good, solid mix for everyone involved to approve the production and the performances. So I feel like they spend a decent amount of time on it. It's like this Everglow rough, and I'm not sure even which person produced it. Might be the same guy as the last one, but my final mix isn't light years different from his. It's just sonically better, but the levels are pretty much the same, maybe a couple liberties, and who knows if he'll have me put them back or whatever. But and then they did give me the rough mix with the American, I think they're American, the English speaking singers on it instead of the Everglow girls. I didn't have a rough with Everglow actually on it. So that was a little different microphones, different textures of voices. But so that part I just have to hope is where they want it. But I feel like they spent some time on their rough mix to make sure it was a decent roadmap, if not for me, for the executives and management, stuff like that,
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we love to have you back. I think this is it's great.
Before we go, man, and you can keep this on the episode, but I just wanted to say to you, it's like you mentioned how much I've helped you, but you've equally, if not more, helped me, and then you may not even realize it, but just the fact that you got me on Pensado's place, and I met Dave and became friends with Dave Pensado, opened so many doors, just as far as meeting people, anywhere from gear manufacturers to artists to actually BTS. If I didn't know Dave Pensado, I would never have mixed BTS. Wow. So that's 100% thankful to you, because it traces back to you recommending me to be on the show.
Wow.
So thank you for that a million times, you know?
Yeah, no, you know, I'm always, I'm a big Bob Horn fan forever, you know, and I think I always tell this story to a lot of people that I mentor, because how important relationships are, you know, and you're somebody that means a lot to me. Thank you so much for that, you know, and hopefully, we'll
thank you
do this again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and let's all
hang out.
Hang out. Yes.